Garrett Bennett Center, and we are here in the Harambee Auditorium on campus in Nashville, Tennessee. Thank you everyone for joining us online and in person. And today, our artist, our poet, is Andrew McFadyen-Ketchum. Funny how a name is so important, but yet we have a hard time, and I got it. So awesome. Andrew has come to us with some books if you're in person, so that means you get to get the benefit of getting it today. However, you can order it online on his website. Is it andrewmk.com? All right. MK, not WK, but MK, he says. And these are the two books that are available. One of them, I think this is a precious gift. If you are purchasing one today, you actually get a bookmark that you can plant and grow something that comes with this one, the Fight or Flight poems, which is is this your first book? I don't know.
It might be my third.
Might be your third. All right. I'm learning. But in any case, we have this one here with us today, and then we have Visiting Hours, beautiful poems, and we're going to hear some of this. So sit back, relax, enjoy. And feel free to clap right where you are. I know we can't hear you if you're online, but that's okay. No need to snap fingers. We're not trying to be quiet so folks can't hear us next door. We are enjoying ourselves and engaging this beautiful artwork today in poetry. So Andrew, come on up, and thank you for presenting your work today.
Thank you. Round of applause. You know, like the second I was like mildly insulted, like, my first book, what is she talking about? And then I was like, wait a minute, if this is my first book, that would have been really great because it's better than my actual first book, you know what I mean? So that wouldn't have been such a bad thing. So that's a compliment to think that I could write this book the first go round. You know, that's part of being a poet. You learn every time, right? So lots of things to say. So the first thing I have to say is that this is the first reading I'm giving as a 1-year married man. And my wife gave, it's sort of funny because like me and my wife give each other gifts all the time. And so like, it's like when a special event arises, you're like, oh darn, I've sort of already given her all the gifts I could give her, or I've given him all the gifts that I could give him. And so you sort of like think about what you're going to do. And man, I mean, she, the first year is it's time, or what exactly, honey, was it that the gold is the color, but then the fragility of time. The fragility of time. Whatever the heck that means. I think time is actually non-fragile, but anyway, she gave me this lovely watch, and so now I'm going to time myself by this watch, which means I have to read analog time, and that could be an embarrassment. When's the last time you guys read analog time? I mean, really, it's hard to do. It's really hard to do. So we're here at Garrett Bennett. Do you know, Linda, how many years this series has been going?
That our resident expert knows of.
Yeah, so 12 years that our resident expert knows of. So, I mean, he's only a mild expert. This is clear. So it's been going at least for 12 years, which is something. And so I'm from Nashville. The Garrett Bennett Center here is in the heart of Nashville. It's an incredible institution. And I've been coming here for 12 or so years, seeing amazing poets do their thing, and many of whom I know and some of whom I don't. And in all honesty, I've been jealous all these years. Like, why have I not gotten to read at this Garrett Bennett Poets Corner? Well, part of it was COVID. Part of it was that I was living in a tent for many years and thus completely unavailable. And so I just want to say thank you. Let's give Linda one more round of applause. Thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it. It really is a thrill. It's something I've been gunning for many years. And every poet has those events or those places or those things they want to do. So I'm happy to be here. So Fight or Flight is my third book. And if you know me at all, you know that I'm a big fan of things that come in threes. Basically, I sort of plan my life around threes. I have 3 children. I have 3 books. Each book is in 3 sections, and I've been married 3 times, once to my former wife and twice to my current one. We got married twice on the same day. So threes are a thing. So I've got 3 sections in this book. So it became, I thought I should read 3 poems per section at a reading where I have some space to do that. Here I have a little space to do that. So I'm going to read 3 poems per section. And around when I'm done reading, 3 poems, I'll sort of pause and look at you and ask you to clap for me because I'll need that. So if you'll respond well to that request, I'll tell you the most awkward moment in a reading is when you ask for applause or cheers or something, and there's just no response at all. That's a difficult moment. This is the first poem in the collection, and it's a poem that other people like more than I do. Do you guys have any poems like that? Yeah, I don't quite understand it. And I was recently informed it was all but going to be included in a very well-known poetry podcast, and I kind of went, well, really? Again? Like it's the one. So here we are. This is On Earth. If the dead don't know how on earth to live, how on earth can the living? Mistakes stack up like nights. We get in over our heads whether or not we truly love the ones we're with. No one asks to be dropped onto the glass like this. And though we do not rehearse our deliveries, we find ourselves delivered nonetheless into these thin-skinned vessels we call the self, in which we love and lose and love and lose again and again. And must learn to trust the stars are fixed in the ether, despite our first fevers. Our mothers either wringing their hands over us in our cribs through the night, or trusting our illness burns brightly, yes, but nowhere near as bright as us. So this book is new enough to where when I have a set list here, Karen and I always set the set list before the reading. It's a really neat thing we do. But then in the book, I don't know where the poems are, so I have to go looking. Okay. So my first book was called Ghost Gear, and it was about growing up in Nashville, Tennessee in the 90s in Sylvan Park, which now everyone wants to live there, but in the 90s, no one wanted to live there. That's where I lived as a result. That's how it works, and that's fine. Lots of hard feelings. And then my second book was about my dear friend, Mary Interlandi, who at the time at my age took her own life right downtown in 2003. And throughout all that time, I was figuring my life out and living it and going out and living in different places. And I got married, and I don't think it was a poor decision. It made sense at the time. That fairly quickly became clear it was not a great decision, And so what happened was, after 10 years of being married, having no children, just working basically, and following those pursuits, I finally had to leave that marriage and go off and figure things out on my own. And I'll expand as we go. But that's what this book is about. It's about discovering, this is not where I need to be in my life. I've got to make a radical change and move in another new direction. And this poem is about an instance in which I started to sort of see more and more how that was unfortunately going to be true. This is called The Sea Lions. She loved all manner of wild animal, In Mexico, no one could stop her from feeding the rat-like tejons at the ruins. In Nevada, she nearly lost a finger petting the wild stallions who grazed just inches from Route 208. In Ireland, she simply would not stick to high ground above the tide pools where the sea lions grazed in the sun. Like tube socks of flesh, the man joked, as they, 3 years married, picked their way away from the other tourists on the shore. Like sea slugs that have doffed their shells, he laughed as they skipped rock to rock across the low tide until they stood within inches of those strange mammals in the loosening light. Their dark skins kaleidoscoped with the weakening sun any time they moved. Their eyes blinked lazily as unhungry flytraps. The wife made a joke of reaching out to touch one, and the husband fell for it, snatching her hand from the air so quickly they nearly lost their balance and fell into each other, laughing. The tide they saw then was coming in, opaque and briny as it frothed around their boots, silently filling the dry gaps that made their way home. The man led the way back. The woman he called Little One, that decade before he finally gave up, too short to return on her own without sopping her feet. "I got you," he said, as he spanned the gaps too wide for her legs with his and held her by the hips to lift her beyond the possibility of her own leaping from dry spot to dry spot, the two of them like dancers on a stage, so entranced by their routine, by their work and rhythm, they were surprised when they struck solid ground, not a stitch of them wet, the husband's hands firm on the wife's waist, ready to aid her aloft, or to fix her, whichever she chose, firmly to ground. Did anyone catch the 3 that was in there? Yeah, no, really? You didn't catch it? 3 years married in the poem. Were you being ironic? Oh, you were, dang it. Okay. This is no use. And I don't ever include epigraphs, ever. It is not my thing. But here it says, after Sappho. "It is no use, mother dear. I cannot keep going. Blame Sappho if you must, fragmented as she was found. Blame my marrying young. Blame rain, the 28 phases of the 37 moons. Blame the angels descending with their swords on fire. Mother, it is no use. That girl who arrived with a pool cue in her hand, naked fingernails alight in her eyes. That girl who made me believe she would make me a father. That girl has nearly killed me with her love." Okay, so that's the end of section 1. A little round of applause would be appreciated. There we go. All right. All right. You know, as those words were unfolding, like, give me a little applause, I thought, it would be really hilarious if they were like, let's not applause at all. Let's make his nightmare come true. You failed me. I mean, really. It's okay. You have two more chances. You can completely dash my belief in the world. So I'm going to go on to the second section. Okay, so the first section is called Forgiveness. And for some reason in poetry books, we give sections titles. I don't know if that's a thing in other books. I don't believe it is. Forgiveness. The second section is called The Unborn. We made this plan. Was this a good plan or a bad plan? Okay, yeah, that's what I figured you'd say. It'd be kind of amazing if my wife was like, "Don't do it." Okay, forget it. Okay, this is called Broken White Boy Heart. Who knows how to write about love or its loss? And who declares the voice in his head. Write about important things. Anything, sweet Jesus, but yourself. Don't write about waking each morning from a dream with a gun. Don't write about how that gun might taste pressed to the tongue, a 9-volt battery, a rusted penny plucked from a wishing well and placed like communion where it is to dissolve. This man was married a decade exactly. And I'm telling you, this is not in the book. This is not for exaggeration. It was on the day of my 10-year anniversary. This man was married a decade exactly. Some sort of sick cosmic joke to have to leave your wife on your 10-year anniversary. But who, the voice reminds him, gives a good goddamn. Today is 697 days since the day he left, and counting. Gone the pet rabbits, gone the white dishes, gone the immersion blender wedding gift, gone the sweater she bought him each Christmas, when he finally said, I have to go. And what of it? The voice interjects. So you're sad. So you're, air quotes, traumatized. So you wake each morning reaching for her in the dark. So you want to die, die, die. I want to lie, lie, lie. So what? You will never have a child. So what? You are not deserving of love. You know what your mother would say. There are starving children in Africa. You know what Facebook would say. Another cop killed another armed black man somewhere in South America. Who are you? Trust me, the voice that inhabits him says, stay silent about your grief. No one cares about your broken white boy heart. I mean, I guess I'm still kind of upset about that. Seriously, when things went down with me, and honestly, when things go down in general, I get this kind of common refrain of, oh, you're a privileged white man. And I totally appreciate and understand that. But it's still hard to, go through a divorce, right? It's still hard to go to work and deal with the bullshit boss. It's still hard to do all of these things. And it's just been an incredibly painful experience to see much of the response to me and what's been going on, as, well, you have everything else, and it's a scary thing to talk about. So thank you for letting me share that. This is luck. And it's a little bit longer. In this book, there are like 4 poems that are longer than a page. Everything else is a page. So in my first 2 books, I had lots of long poems. That was sort of my thing. And in this book, I wanted to write smaller, condensed, more powerful, what in the world that means pieces. But I still had some longer ones in there. This is luck. Night balks. The cirrus clouds shrug their shoulders. The moon tears bright white sheets of tissue paper from the clouds and lays them out like tarot. The magician, the fool, the reaper's curved sickle. Later, they'll call it a moonset. 2 a.m., stumbling home, the pale globe of a woman's knees slipping through skirts of cloud. Seems strange to him now how long it took to derive a word for that image. Like a sunset, he said, but the moon up there, imbibing the sky. Then he didn't know how lucky he was to be alive, only hours after bearing witness to the first forest fire to sweep through Linville Gorge in a decade. Barely 20 years old, he'd clung to the cliff face, anchored a mere 100 feet above the flames that slithered through narrow leaf and pond pine as he sucked in the few pockets of air he could find, his partner tethered out of sight above him. Terrified, the fire's heat would snap the ropes from which they hung, that their gears so carefully placed in fissures and cracks would pop like loose teeth from a burning body until the heat receded. and its smoke lifted to reveal the trees below, naked and sinewy as bent ends of wire, the sky dark as tar paper. Whatever faith he had then in stone and steel is gone. But an image remains of the peregrine falcons he watched drop ahead of the fire line to feed on the field mice and voles who fled the earth, baked in a flame. How could anyone blame them for celebrating their lives after that? Amber shots of liquor lined up on the bar, already exaggerating the details of their story as they smoothed dollar bills on the hard edge of the jukebox and sang along to the cliches of Tom Petty as though they had voices. And I'm free, free falling. The car keys fished from his pocket by the pretty bartender who refused his certainly obnoxious pleas for her name before finally they made their way home beneath that moonset sky. Now, when the moon rises to skip its pinpoints of light off the spangled shingles of rooftops, now when the moon illuminates the otherwise dark heights of maples and calls forth his dream of fire, he is not so lucky. The ropes weaken with heat. A crucial anchor pops. Something above snaps. His lungs fill with smoke and he can hold on no longer. But when he falls, it's not towards the lit wicks of treetops, the hot kiln of the earth not rushing toward him, but instead away. One of those swift raptors having gathered him mid-fall as prey, and now the hillsides and pastures dropping away, the sky darkening with night, the crisscrossing deltas and rivers and whitecaps to the west he so loves, turning the color of blood as lost light funnels between the peaks, like a spirit taking leave of its body, and he, this boy, this man to be, can finally breathe. So, thank you. Thank you, though that was not requested. Thank you. So for many years, I've imagined reading that poem. That poem's pretty old. And I've wondered if I'd actually sing Tom Petty, and I did. So good for me. Very short poem to end the section. Who knows what an orb weaver is? What is it? Now you have to know.
I do, but I just have to, go deeper into my mind and give like either a small or a long. But an orb weaver, as far as I knew, was somebody that had to do with something ghost-like.
That's not what I.
It's not? Okay.
Whoa, but
An orb weaver.
no. Wait a minute. When the poem is read, you're going to be like, I tried to tell you the definition of orb weaver, but you told me no. Like,
Yeah.
you're onto something. The definition I'm looking for is it's one of those gigantor spiders that, you go out like at, 6 in the morning and in spring, and there's this giant web with like the sparkling this and this giant spider. That's an orb weaver. No, I'm telling you, just hang with me. We're good. This is called the Orb Weaver's Song. Our orb weaver has passed on. Come spring, countless of her children will hatch from the eggs she's left behind. A planet hovering in its cradle of silk. A womb suspended in the porch light's gleam. Does she sing, I wonder, to her little ones in her sleep? Do they sing back, the unborn, in the midst of her dream? Your definition works just fine. Okay, give me a round of applause for this section. So, poems are weird. They sort of find you in weird places. So first off, like that just happened is what's really neat about poetry. It has a spiritual connection between things that happens all on its own. That poem it actually occurred in real life. So my parents had a porch with a light, and there was this orb weaver's egg sac that was there, like, yes, like all spring or fall or whatever the heck, whenever the heck they're in there doing their thing. And yeah, I had just moved back and was just starting to hang out with Karen, my wife, and to figure out my life. And this it never hatched, which happens all the time with orb weavers and all sorts of animals, and of course with us as well. But what was really interesting was I was so taken by this orb. Every time I go home, I was like, let's look at the orb, And so I posted on it on Instagram or something. I just wrote this little thing, and I went to Cumberland University down the road to present at a class and just talk poetry. And one of the students had looked into me and she said, is that a poem? And I said, well, yes, of course it is. That was you get the joke. Like, I had no idea. I said, well, yeah, of course it is. And then here it is. It was a really beautiful thing that, a poem could emerge from an Instagram post. I mean, I don't know, I guess that's normal for some people, but not for me. Okay, so all right. 3 poems to go. I wanted to say, as I've been reading, if a question has arisen, feel free to keep that stored in your mind. If a question arises here in the last little bit, keep that in your mind. We're going to do a little Q&A, and I don't get to talk about this book a whole lot because, I'm busy raising kids and doing all those things. So when I have an opportunity to share with you how this book came together, which to me is mildly interesting, I'm happy to do so. And to talk about poetry and how we make poems, I love to do that. Okay, this is something more suitable. Please, my love, dig a hole in the earth and drop me inside and bury me over with earth and build a fire where I lie and wait for my return. As a red-winged blackbird, as white noise, as a drop of water on the tip of a leaf. And I will come to you each night, and I will sing to you each night, and no one but you will know that I am still here. So, one of the great misunderstandings of poetry is that it really is it's a total wooing device. That's you know what I mean? Like, so I have a few rules when I give a reading from this book, and this is completely different from what I've ever done. I will never do the same reading more than once. With my first book, I did the same reading like a whole bunch of times because I really wanted to perfect it and get it down. I've done that. So I'm moving on to it will never be the same. The second rule is Karen will always help me put the reading together. And the third rule is I will always woo her with a poem. So there you are. All rules achieved. Reading over. Bye. Okay. This is Whooping Crane. It's like, so much of this book was written before COVID, but then it was really being worked on and perfected and turned into a book during COVID. And Eileen Castanado, is that right? At Castanado at Migozine, during, like in the depths of COVID, she revived Migozine, which is a magazine she'd been doing for years, and then put it aside to do other things. Well, now she was stuck at home, so good time to bring these projects back to life. And she wanted poems about being where stationary. What do we call it? Where we couldn't leave, stay at home, or that's not even lockdown. Yeah, lockdown poems. Shelter in place. That's it. She had a shelter in place issue, and I don't even know how she knew who I was, but she asked me for some poems, and so I was like, I'm not writing any poems about raising my 3 kids in isolation. That's like, basically the whole poem would just be the letter A repeated for the entire page, with an exclamation. It'd be that. And so I sent her some poems, and blah blah blah. She took them and whatnot, and they were out there. And Martha Solano emails me out of nowhere about how much these poems mean something to her and are touching her, and la la. And I'm going, really? Like, I had no idea. And she ended up writing one of the the blurb that's like inside the book, and just being a big advocate for this book. She really helped me realize, like, okay, the poems I'm writing are meaningful to people. They touch a nerve, a good nerve, and I need to keep going forward with this project. So she deserves a lot of appreciation for that. This is Whooping Crane. The man doesn't know why he's come to the lake. 6 days straight, he's woken from hard dreams. Melodramatic, he says to himself. Nothing anyone wants to read about. Thus his drive to the ice to pick his way through the trees. He doesn't know it yet, but he's come for me. The white whooping crane he spots looking back over his shoulder as I rise from the margin of the lake with 2 flaps of my wings. He stops, transfixed mid-step, my movement through sunlight, transforming my flight into blades of blinding light, my swim through the sky becoming and disappearing as I blend like time into the sycamores. This is when he sees them. The deer tracks cast in the ice-hard mud, the day moon inhabiting the clouds. This is when he hears them, the chit-chit of chickadees, the squawking gang of jays. Now the man can smell fresh earth on the wind. Now the man can smell the coming snow. Now he can accept his lover's love, the world he inhabits, made so loud by my rise, it shines. Okay, this will be the last poem. This is The Hammer's Strike. Do the wild things find each other beautiful? Does the buck gaze upon the doe, pluck forget-me-nots of messages of love in the streambed for her to find? Does the heart of the rainbow trout quicken with the sight of the season's first turning leaves? Do mother robins push their fledglings from the nest and think, beautiful, just beautiful? I hope not. For this means a world in which the star-nosed mole knows one day her children will die. This means a world in which the black leech murders the hornworm to take his wife, in which the red fox yearns for deeper caves, the foxglove for more effulgent bells, that church bells pray for song without the pang of the hammer's strike. Leave that to us, I say to the tittering titmice and doves. Leave that to me, I will say to my lover's eldest son, struggling with rage in our arms, the little girl still in the womb, the toddler born a month too soon. Let's make a new world together, I will say to their mother when they quiet into sleep. Can't we stay the hand of the fisherman woken early for the stream? Surely we can teach them how never to cry, how never to feel pain. Tell me, sweet thing, little rose, tell me we can catch each fledgling before it fails to open its wings. Okay, that's all. You know, huh? Encore? Yes. I mean, I'll read you another poem, but let's talk a little bit first. I'll read another poem. No, but one of the neat things is, so we were at a restaurant earlier, and we were planning the set list, and I said, I'm kind of frustrated that the kids don't have a poem in which they're all included. So we have 3 kids, and there's a poem for each of them, but interestingly, I didn't write a poem to combine them all to one, but, we hadn't quite gotten there until the book was published. It was gone. I guess that's for book 4. So what we just did, we just added them. and to the hammer strike. We added, so I will say to my lover's eldest son, struggling with rage in our arms, let's make a new world together, right? But here's what it came out to. I will say to my lover's eldest son, struggling with rage in our arms, little girl still in the womb, the eldest born a month too soon. And we didn't even intend the womb soon rhyme, like this accidental, or perhaps you meant it, but I didn't. I never know. And it went on from there. It's just neat how poetry works, like, it's too bad I didn't do that the first time, but oh well, here we are. So I don't know. What do we do now, Linda? We a little Q&A and talk about poetry, and I mean, we should do that. Yeah, we got plenty of time. We got this lovely anniversary pocket watch says we have about 20 minutes left, so that's perfect. Like I said, I don't get to talk about this book that much, so if we can find a way to talk about it, that'd be great. What do you got? Lots of thoughts? Okay, well, give me one.
Well, spinning around the life that you have led, you bring out a lot of things that you went through, things that people may see a different way, but you show them another way from a person who is being honest from the soul. You're coming to these people, through your words, and they may read these words and say, wow, this is actually an honest person telling me how they felt about these situations.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes there are people who have hard situations, and they need to read stuff like this because they don't see the simpleness of what comes out from someone's soul.
It's so I have some reactions to that, but also then I'm going to come back and be like, wait, you have to ask me a question. But I have a reaction to that. So I didn't really.
You can reprise anything she said. I don't think for people online.
Oh goodness gracious, reply. I guess the reprisal of what you just said was like, you're a person coming, bearing like a very honest, like soul witness to this experience of getting a divorce and having to figure your life out. Is that a decent summary? And like, that's like a hard thing to do or something, or rare or unusual or something. Yeah. Okay. So
People make it more complicated than it is.
yeah.
That's what I got.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so my reaction to it was, I didn't really expect for people to say that, but I've heard that a lot. Like, it's so nice that they say the following. It's so nice that like a man is willing to share their experience with this and like not like hide anything and like say it how it is. So first off, I'm hiding all sorts of things, right? Like, it's not, I'm not, I'm still just doing the best I can. But I don't know. I'm surprised by that response, because I thought I was just sort of like, okay, well, my life is really hard, and what I'm doing to try to fix it, living in a tent for 2 years and being alone a lot of the time, and like, sort of like meditating to the moon while the Celtics lose, that sort of thing. I didn't really like, as I was writing poems about that, I didn't really understand that would be anything out of the norm. But then a couple of people challenged me. They said, well, how many books can you find written by men about divorce? And I was like, well, there's, and right now, like, all sorts of people are going, well, there's this book and this book and this book. But you're right. Like, it's not.
Or infertility.
Like, we're writing about infertility. Yeah.
About infertility.
Yeah. Well, that's awkward. But yeah, I mean, so.
Situational infertility.
Yeah.
Divorce-induced infertility. I'm just digging things up.
Divorce-induced infertility? Wow. I think you just created a hashtag. So, yeah, I didn't know what else to do. I was just going around doing my thing. And the poems that came were the poems that I felt that, like with all the poems that I write, they're the ones that stick. It's like weird. You have these ideas. Don't you like drive around in your car and you're like, oh yeah, I'll write a poem about that, and it's gone, right? But these were the ones that was like, no, man, you got to stop driving the car and write the poem. And on Earth, that actually happened. I was driving. I remember that. You know that mural that's, okay, if you're on Charlotte Ave, there's that old lumber place, which I think is gone now, and there's that storage facility, and there's that big mural. And I don't know, but this on Earth, what on earth? Karen says this all that. What on earth? I was going, well, if we don't know how on earth, if the dead don't know how on earth to live, how can the living live on earth? Like, what are we going to do? And I pulled over and wrote that poem. So it I don't know. That's my reaction to your thoughts. Anyone else? Yes, please. They need the mic so that we can hear it on the
Yeah. So I was just kind of wondering. You talked earlier. You kind of briefly mentioned and hinted at going around and like kind of teaching about poetry and writing. So I'm just curious to know if you were willing to share something that you kind of hone in on or talk about or teach when you are in that kind of mindset and presence of talking about teaching and co-creating in the process of whether that's giving a workshop or just describing to folks, other poets or students or community members that want to learn how to write or how to keep writing.
Yeah. Can we get a whiteboard up here? Like, no, I'm kidding. By the way, what was your name? RJ. I'm sorry. I saw you when you came in, but I got distracted and never got to say hello. Thank you for coming. Two things are sort of in opposition of each other, I think. So the first one is like the like nail it down. Like if I go to a university, give a talk, this is the talk, right? And that's it's called lyric narrative. And that's the idea that a poem can be lyrical, like it can be musical. It can have just be musical. We'll stick with that. And narrative that can tell a story or sort of tell a story at the same time. And that if you do those two things, you'll typically end up with a decent poem. So I wrote my first two books with that theory in mind. And then for this book, and this is like the most exciting thing for me about this is why the book exists. The book doesn't exist because I had a story to tell. The book exists because I had a way that I was curious to see if I could tell it. And that was, we're tossing all that out and we're going to be short. So when you go lyric narrative, you tend to get a little lengthy, at least for me. We're going to be short. We're going to be compact. We're going to be compact. And I flex my muscle, my tiny little puny little, 6'4", too tall for his own frame muscles. But, I flex these things every time I say it. I want to pack it in. I want to get it in. And I want to have this thing that you can look at and call a poem. And it's got everything. It's got a person in it. It's got music. It's got to have music. Maybe that's the answer. If you don't have music in it, no offense, but not for me, and it's gotta be clear. Like I want my neighbor, every neighbor, I want to go to them with a poem and be like, read this. Do you get this? So those are two things are kind of in opposition, but kind of not. If you really work hard, you can make them work together. But yeah, so lyric narrative, and then, can people who don't read poetry understand this? This is one of my frustrations with the poetry world, and it's not the poetry world's fault. It's part of the art, right? But can people who, when you're walking down the street with your dog and there's one of those little libraries and you open it up and you're like, oh, look, a book that I can enjoy. Like, why can't poetry be a little bit more like that? Why can't you open it up and go, oh, a poem, and oh, I get this and I feel this? That doesn't mean that everybody has to interpret a poem the same way. Just the other day, I was sharing On Earth with Karen because I got word that was most likely going to be on this podcast, which I don't have confirmation, so I can't say which. But for me, it's very exciting. And I read to her, and she read the last two lines one way, and of course I read them another way. They were both right, and they were both as meaningful at the same time. But it was amazing that we could both get the same feel, the same vibe, the same basic meaning, and then have a completely different takeaway message. To me, that was kind of beautiful. Yeah. So if I could write that into a little lecture and take it to universities, I'll do that. Kind of hard to do. Okay, we got more time. We got plenty of time. More questions. Come on, help me talk about this book.
Mine isn't really about poetry, but I'm attracted to stories about people, and particularly about artistic types. And whenever I hear people talk about their art, whether it's musicians or painters or playwrights, the central piece seems to be that the more individual you write, the more universal it actually is. And so I'm surprised that you, in telling your story, don't seem to know that it's so universal. You're going deep enough that although your story is different, your narrative's different than somebody else, that it's universal. You're touching something that everybody touches. What keeps you from knowing that?
What keeps me from knowing the obvious is because I'm a big old dum-dum. No, it's true. It's true. I'm really oddly, I don't know. In fact, I think it helps me as an artist. I'm a little bit, I don't know how people are going to respond, and I kind of make a decision not to think too much about how people are going to respond, because if you do that, then, oh Lord, you're down the rabbit hole of whatever that is, So I think it's almost like I have a little bit of an intentional blind spot. So for Mary's book, for Visiting Hours, so this, I'm laughing. It's such a strange thing to laugh about. But so Visiting Hours about, me and Karen were actually both friends with her, but she was one of my deep childhood friends. I grew up with her. She committed suicide in 2003 when she was 19 and I was 21. And people who had experienced suicide wrote me emails. And I was like, really? Well, yeah, obviously. So I don't have a good answer to why I'm a little blind to the way people are going to respond to the work sort of on an interpersonal level. I think it's because I'm oddly technically minded, which maybe makes some sense for you because you know my history a little bit. I'm a little unusually technically minded. I don't necessarily think about the emotional side of poetry. I think about the technical side, but then at the same time I'm this super emotional person and it just sort of invades and I have no idea. And so the result is something that, I suppose is universal. I titled the book Fight or Flight, not because it was about a divorce, but because it was about trauma. There's not just one kind of trauma in here. I focus on the divorce because there's a narrative there and I find my family and everything works out. But within all of that, oh boy, there's poems about trauma that have nothing to do with that at all. So that's such a disarming question. I hope that addressed it to some degree. Great question. Thank you.
I was going to say, growing up in Sylvan Park, well, I taught a lot of kids there. I was going to ask this question. Who inspired you? Was it in Sylvan Park or was it later on in life? There was a teacher or someone who had you write your first poem.
Good question.
Remember that anyway?
It has a Sylvan Park answer. So wait a minute. First off, Sylvan Park Elementary?
Well,
Oh, you went that side. Okay. Yeah. Do you know the produce place? Yeah. So my first job ever was at the produce place, and I was 14 years old, and I was like a sweep up boy, they called us. Like we swept up all the corn and tomatoes and all the stuff that was on the floor. And long story short, I'm sure that while I was at Hume-Fogg, it was my freshman year of high school, I'm sure that we were reading poetry or something. But at that point in my life, I really didn't like poetry. I liked fiction. Didn't care for poems much. And one day I was sweeping up underneath the corn bin. Like, we'll never forget it. Never forget it. And out wobbled this piece of corn. And we all had like markers, like, because we were produce boys, so we had a marker. Yeah. Very macho. And I pulled out a corn crate and I wrote on it, what if I were this piece of corn? And I proceeded to write this like 12-line poem of questions, like, what if I was this? What if I was that? And it was like this sort of like ridiculously silly investigation of what it was to be human. And so I gave it to Nathan Sizemore, who may or may not be watching right now. And he was a little bit older than me and much cooler than me. Still true. I said, what do you think of this? And he proceeded to read it. And everybody loved it. And I was like, what just happened? Like, what was this? And this is not a joke. That was when I was 14, so 29 years ago. That set me on this journey. That's it. So then at Hume-Fogg, there was Bill Brown, of course, and Jan Harmon, and both of whom would be here if one didn't live in Florida now in their lovely retirement situation, and the other weren't just unable to make it. But I mean, Jeff Harden was one of my other high school teachers, and I don't know where he is. I'm gonna have to have a serious negative phone call with him. I'm kidding. He just couldn't make it tonight. But so yeah. We can have one more. I think we have six minutes. What we get one more and I'll answer it in 30 seconds. I promise. Okay. Well, that's a real challenge.
So I might have some inside information.
Oh.
I might have some inside information.
Turn the mic off.
They start off correctly. You start this book out, you're in a tent and you're turning away from the group, from popular culture, from
Other
influence.
poets.
How did you pick apart the truth and the authenticity while you're by yourself? I
just trusted myself. Yeah, I just trusted myself. It was a very difficult time. I was very disappointed with a lot of different people and organizations, and that included the poetry community for reasons that go beyond anything we've talked about tonight. But I just was like, I'm done with this group of people. I'm going to do this myself. And I just didn't have any other solution. So I just had to trust myself and shared poems with you and shared poems with a couple of people. But,
was outside of the poetry.
yeah, I didn't work with a whole lot of poets. Yeah. No. I just trusted myself. And, as I was joking earlier, if I had tried to write this book as my first book, I think it would have been a crash and burn. And I think because I had some experience underneath my belt and some reason to trust myself and just good instincts that I had developed over years and years and years and years of writing. I mean, I'm what am I, 42, but I've been writing since I was 14. That's a pretty good length of time. At this time it was 23, 24 years. So if you write a lot and you really work at it, you don't have to worry about whether it's going to work or not. You can trust yourself. That's what I would teach if I went out to. There you go. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Thank you. It's been a gift to have you with us tonight. It's Garrett Bennett. And I know my name was said because you said it. I don't even know if I said it at the beginning, but I'm Linda Furtado. I'm Director of Spirituality and Arts here at Garrett Bennett. And this has been Poets Corner. If you would like to hang out with us for any of our other occasions that happen, there's a lot that goes on here. Check out the calendar online. Week to week, we've got Sunday night Vespers Jazz service in Whiteman Chapel, just around the corner from this building. On pretty much any given day during the week, if you want to come check out the art gallery, we have a gallery in Lasky on the second floor where we can discuss and engage around visual arts. And this time, the exhibit is Turning Homeward is the title, and there's 5 photographers that came together for this particular exhibit, so check it out. If you want to join us on Tuesdays, there's a chapel service at 12:30, and we also eat. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. If you want to have lunch with us from 11:30 to 12:30 in the Susie Gray Dining Hall on the other side of campus, come eat. It is good food. Our head chef, Chef Joe, as my generation says, is off the chain. He is amazing. So come check it out, eat, and engage in conversation, because really Garrett Bennett is on a mission to be a place where individuals and groups can engage each other to achieve a more just world. So that happens when we come together in person or online. I know we got some online folks out there. So thank you for jumping on. Do engage with us in the comments, and go in peace.
Thank you.